Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to our webinar today. We are pleased to provide an important webinar covering the post-merger integration points to a successful acquisition. My name is Richard Martin. I'm going to be your moderator today, and I'm very happy to introduce our speaker, Cedric Collonges, who is the head of M&A at KNDS, who will discuss how to plan for successful integration and how to address the many challenges that will inevitably arise. Before I hand it over to Cedric, I'd like to just point out that if you have any questions or you want to have an issue or whatever, please use the chat bar located on the webinar management side, and we will address all questions at the end of the webinar. Cedric, I'm going to hand it over to you. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So Cedric Collonges speaking. The idea of today's webinar is not to give you a very theoretical lecture on post-merger integration. It's more to give you some recommendation based on my own experience on the post-merger integration, and as well how to make a successful M&A transaction. So the first thing I would say is to try to define what is a successful acquisition. And for me, there are two ways to look at that. The first one is, of course, delivering the strategic intent of the acquisition. And the second one is a more quantitative one, which is creating a value. If we look at a recent study made by Boston Consulting Group, which is a client survey that they made, the first reason for a non-successful acquisition is due to poor integration concept. So definitely, and I think this is pretty important, that the post-merger integration is well under control. So now if we move to the first way to look at an acquisition and what is a successful acquisition is an acquisition that is delivering the strategic intent. And to do so, it might be pretty obvious, but the first requirement for that is to have a precise vision on the strategic intent we want to achieve. And to do that, you need to define clear value drivers for your strategic intent, which can be improving the target performance. It can be an industry consolidation. It can be removing excess capacity in the industry or speed up the market access to some products, or it can also be acquiring skills and competencies. The first thing I would like to say here is you really need to be precise and clear. And there is a first temptation not to do the job correctly there. It's when a target is available. You know, a target is for sale. It's cheap. It's a good opportunity. It's if we don't acquire it, then the competitors will do that. When you are in such a case, you may have a temptation not to define the strategic intent well because, I mean, you have to do it quickly and it's available. But definitely, you need to be very precise on that, and you need to specify value drivers. The second comment I would like to make on this part is that some strategic intents prove to be more successful than other ones. So this is not the topic for today, but definitely experiences show that improving the target company's performance, like we can have with a financial sponsor acquisition, is normally delivering good results. Accelerating market access for a target products is also demonstrating good results. Now, the second point I would like to make on this is that during the due diligence, you will have to check and see whether the initial strategic intent is really applicable to the target. So you may have some findings during the due diligence that are weak signals that maybe it's not going to work very well. And here you need to be brave. And even if you are finding that kind of things at the end of the process, you should not hesitate to start from scratch again and say, okay, it's not going to work, or maybe not as well as we plan, and maybe we need to reassess the acquisition. This one is very difficult, especially if you already spent a lot of time in the due diligence and in the process, and expensing a lot of fees and things like that. Let's just take an example that I have in one of my first acquisition I made in it was 20 years ago, but we were acquiring a company, and the strategic intent was to cross fertilize distribution channel. So the idea was we acquire a company, they have a portfolio of products. We take our own portfolio and we both have different distributors, and we will put our products in their through their distributors network, and we can do the same with their products. Now the distributors were not totally the same. So on one hand you have generalist electrical wholesalers, and on the other hand you had very high value added distributors, or even in some cases IT distributors. So it turned out we acquired the company, but after 6 months we realized that those synergies won't be there because just it was not the same distributors, and no way to sell the products of one company through the network of the other one. So next point I would like to cover is that after that you need to make sure that you have a very pragmatic strategic implementation plan defined based on, I would try to limit that to 3 to 6 action plans, very practical one, very operating ones, not very theoretical or financial ones, and they have to be followed by the top management, and you need to have the appropriate KPIs or the appropriate indicators, like for instance the number of salespeople you want to train. For instance, if you acquire a portfolio of products and you want to sell that through your own network, then you need to train your people. You need to incentivize them. The rule for that needs to be clear. Who will record the sales? So you need to put in place some specific rules. You need, in many cases, to certify products. You need to visit customers. You need to change maybe your commercial policy. So all of that needs to be done before you can see the first dollar of top line synergies. And if you are not monitoring that, you definitely have a risk that nothing will happen, and 2 years after, you will not see any top line synergies, which are the more difficult to get, the most difficult to get. Another indicators can be to follow on the key employees retention. Make sure that the key people you identify during the due diligence are still there, that they are working on what is important for you, not what was important for them. Because from time to time you want good people, skilled people, experts in some technology to work for you, but then they have to work on your products, not maybe on their products. You need to see whether you have long-term development plan, mobility plan. That can be very important if you want people to cross, people within the organization. You also need to have from time to time crash or succession plan if your strategic intent is based on competency acquisition. I had several acquisitions where the strategic intent was to acquire people, competencies, and after 2 years, the key people were always the same with no crash or succession plan. And then when you have that, you need to put some retention plan again and again, which can be very expensive. So now if we move to the next slide, once you have defined what is the strategic intent, During the due diligence, which is a limited exercise, then you have a confirmation that the target could be well fitted for that, and that you have a pretty pragmatic plan, operating plan to be followed by the top management in the first 6 months. Then you need to move to the integration plan itself. I think the first things to do after closing, and you need to be very quick about that, is to communicate the intent. The teams, especially the one from the acquired company, need to understand why this transaction took place. In most cases, this is clear for the acquisition team, maybe for the strategy team or the headquarters of the acquiring company. In a lot of cases, the top management team of the acquired company will leave pretty shortly after the acquisition. So definitely you need to spend a lot of time to communicate the strategic intent and why you acquired this company. I have in mind an acquisition of a company with 3 offices, one in the country of the acquiring entity. So this office was visited twice during the first 12 months after the acquisition. But for the other 2 offices, it was decided to cascade some communication kit through, the management team of the acquired company. But no visit from the top management, and no real explanation of the strategic intent. And after 12 months, the buy-in of the acquisition was very, very strong in the office of the one that was visited twice. But we suffered from a high turnover of people in the other 2 offices because people just didn't understand why we were acquiring this company. So definitely there is a need to go quick and to communicate clearly about that. The next recommendation is that you should focus on business items. People need to understand why and what could be the business benefit of it. You never make an acquisition for reporting purpose. And in most cases, if you can identify 3 to 6 actions, you will cover 80% of the expected value creation. Here, there is a tendency in the post-merger integration to move to reporting stuff and HR plan, because actually the support function team in a company, or the back office team in a company, are the ones that are that are equipped to do this kind of project, and they are used to it, and therefore they can come very quickly with beautiful playbooks, and they will overwhelm the team with actions which are not business oriented. And of course, you need to do that, but it's not the priority, and it is not the reason why you acquired this company. So you really need to protect a little bit the integration manager to make sure that his focus is on the 3 to 6 action plan, which are business action plan. Another thing which I think is very important is that you need to be very careful during the transition phase. One of the most difficult also phases when an acquisition is moving from the glamorous M&A world, when you are talking to bankers, you are talking about millions. The time frame is very quick, and it's a one-off story. So it's everyone is excited about that. And then just after closing, you are moving this entity to a kind of business as usual cycle with a business review, budget, reporting constraints. And this one is pretty difficult to realize. One of the most difficult thing I found during all the acquisition I made is that you need to secure the business plan, because in most cases you have in your business plan uh, some lines of additional resources that will be needed in the first 2 years. I don't know, hiring new salespeople, training people, certifying products, things like that. And all of that is additional support function cost. And we all know that in companies, it's pretty difficult to found additional function cost. We, in most cases, it's required to decrease and to make saving. But if you cannot secure that, and of course the best way to do it is to have a specific action for that in your acquisition process, is to say if you want the company or the group to put the money to acquire this company, you as a business unit, you need to secure that if we plan to hire 10 new guys next year, you will do it. Okay, I've seen in my life acquisition that proved to be not successful because we just haven't done what was planned, like hiring salespeople, training people, certification of products that were postponed because of budget constraints, or we just stopped product developments because we wanted to allocate, this R&D money for something else. So according to me, what's really important is that the integration manager should not have to fight to get what was planned. Of course, I'm talking here when you do find a target which is rather what you were expecting after due diligence. If of course if you are discovering totally different things, then maybe you need to move to a B plan. But except from that, again, the integration manager should not have to fight for that. If there were some additional resources planned, then you need to put that on the table. I mean, by the way, you paid what, 10 years of results or maybe 12 years of results. So to sacrifice all the value creation because you want to save on one or two or three additional people just for 1 quarter because you have some budget constraints is really a pity for. But I know that it can happen. It's just because you change the cycle of from M&A to business as usual. Okay, so that were the some recommendation regarding defining the strategic intent and then make sure you can secure the strategic intent delivery. Now I would like on the next slide to talk about creating some value. So you can see on that slide that creating value is not just about achieving the business plan. Because of course, at one stage, in most company, you decided the price according to a business plan, to a discounted cash flow. You try to value some synergies. You anticipate some transaction costs, some integration costs, and of course, you arrive to the combined enterprise value. And you have to compare that with the price you paid. So in this slide, you will see that your price you paid was split between a market value and a premium. So that's when you are dealing with a listed company, for instance. So there is a market value. You want to take the control, so you have to pay a premium for that. It can be also a not listed company, so you just have the purchase price, and of course the difference between the combined enterprise value and what you paid is what is expected in terms of value creation for the acquirer. As you can see in that example, you pay a little bit more than 700, and you try to create with an expectation of value creation of a little bit less than 150. So it's really a risky business because you have to put 700 on the table and to try to create 150. So definitely a risky business. A few words on that. as you can see, the only thing is not about only achieving the business plan. The first thing that you need to make sure is that you are finalizing the purchase price, um, and you keep control over that. What I mean by that is that in the purchase price, there is, of course, the price you paid at closing, but there can also be some earn-out mechanism that you are going to pay over the next, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years, depending on some performances, depending on some achievements. Um, so those ones you really need to keep control, and that's my experience. You, as I would say, the the gatekeeper of the value, you need to make sure that you are only paying when the owner or the seller or the performance of the target is deserving the earnout. I'm saying that because in a lot of example, I got some pressure from the business people to say, okay, maybe the performance is not there, but nevertheless, we should pay the earnout because the guy are nice to us, they worked well, it's a good target. Yes, but when you do that, then if you are not just respecting the contractual agreement and the initial agreement, you are just overpaying the company compared to your initial decision. So that's the first one. The second thing, what you need to follow up pretty carefully is all the warranties that have been negotiated by the teams during the acquisition. And in some cases, you don't put in place the structure or the follow-up mechanism just to be able to raise a claim and to get some money. I have in mind a claim, a warranty that I negotiated in one case on some profitability level of the contracts that were in the backlog of a company. So it was 3 weeks of tough negotiation because the seller didn't want to put any warranty on that. At the end of the day, I was able to get something, but the financial team of the target didn't put the appropriate mechanism in place, and therefore it was not possible to follow up and to document properly a claim. So we could not get what what we could have got, and therefore it's also overpaying the target in a way. So that was the first comment on the purchase price. You need to follow up very carefully, earn out when you have, and warranty. Then, of course, you need to look at the standalone business plan and the standalone valuation. I think here you should try to follow trends like market shares, price, volume, because if you are just looking at turnover, for instance, um, it's going to be very difficult to understand whether the trend is good, but the market maybe has a downturn, because we all know that when we do a 5 years or 10 years business plan with Excel, we are taking average growth rate, and it's never the right one for a given year. So I think here it's more important to follow trends than numbers. Cost synergies. My experience is that what you don't have in the first 2 years won't be there afterwards. So if you can't get them in the first 2 years, then you will never get them. And on top line synergies, I think that you should try to confirm dynamics and trends rather than numbers, because in most cases, the top line synergies won't be there before 2 or 3 years. So if you are just looking at the business plan and the numbers, you won't see anything at the beginning, and you won't see anything in the first 2 years. So my recommendation would be there: try to confirm the feasibility of top line synergies. Maybe if you can do some sales with a very good customer of you, if you can combine sales from the two companies with one customer, that can be a way to do it. And then again, for me, what's more important is to follow up on the 3 to 6 action plans that were defined as the top business priority for the top executive. Now, if we move on the next slide, I would say that, and it's more some recommendation on the measurements of value creation. Again, based on my experience, you should try, and that can be made at the handover phase when you have between signing and closing. So you know that now the deal normally will close. I mean, 95% of likelihood to close. I would recommend the execution team, so the M&A team and the strategy team, and maybe so the acquisition team, to write very precisely the BP assumption. I think it's pretty important because 1 year, 2 years after, if you are not on plan and if you want to really understand what are the deviations, if you only have an Excel or a PowerPoint file, it's going to be very, very difficult. So my recommendation, and I know that a lot of private equity firms are doing that, they do it word very precisely and describe. I would recommend to track synergies only for the main ones. I know there can be debate on that, but if you don't want to overwhelm your integration manager with tracking peanuts, you really I think you should focus on the main synergy streams. Another point which is quite important is that, of course, we all know that acquisition, you have a few months, a few weeks to do some due diligence, and it's a limited exercise. And what you can find afterwards might be drastically different to what you expect. It can be the quality of the products, it can be the people that you discover after a few months that they are not as good as you believe they were, or that some of them moved away, or that, I don't know, they are not respecting the non-competition clause or whatever. If that happens, I think you should acknowledge it as quick as possible and move to a B plan. So now the company is yours, so you cannot just cancel the transaction. But rather than hiding those things for a while and say, okay, let's wait a little bit, and then 2 years after you are still with no B plan. I mean, make it a call, recognize, okay, we discover things that we haven't expected, and it's detrimental to maybe the value creation. So maybe we have to recognize a loss. But at least we move to a B plan, which is a positive plan, and it's not every quarter the target is not at the plan, and it's a failure, and it's a major failure. No, you should say, okay, now we have what we have. It's not exactly what we want, so let's move to a B plan and try to create something out of that, maybe different to the initial plan. I think that for education purpose, having a B plan recognized and authorized by the top management is important, because then it gives also an official start and recognizing that we may make mistake, but then we have to do something with an asset that we get. And the last recommendation I would have is to stop measuring value creation or business plan or tracking synergies, not because there is a rule that you say that it should last 2 years and that's all, but rather than when you decide that it's not that the pain to or the effort to follow up and to report is not worth the what you can find. So if you are comfortable with the fact that most of your synergies are on track, then you can stop follow-up, you can stop reporting on that very quickly. Now, if you discovered bad thing and you move to a B plan and you want them to make sure they do a turnaround or thing like that, then I think you should follow up that much longer. Okay, now I would suggest to move to the integration process itself. So my recommendation is that the top management should be asked to focus on strategic intent delivery and value creation drivers. Of course, doing that is easier when there is a strong PMI process and strong tools, because then, of course, you can ask them to focus on what's important business-wise, but they are sure that for the rest it will move on according to the process. Having such PMI process and tools also enables to capitalize on past projects. I implemented that 6 years ago in a big international firm, which is a pretty acquisitive company, and there was no PMI process in place, which means that each time the integration manager had to start from scratch again and again. And as I said, when they did that, they started with the reporting, with the controlling people, with the HR people, and not on the business. What is also really important when in this PMI process and tools is that you need to reinforce transition phases. Each time you are moving from strategy or from the initial phase of an acquisition to execution team, to the transition phase, and then back to the business. If you are not having strong transition phases, you will lose a lot of information, and you won't be able to get what you are able to get on the warranty side, on the earn-out side, and all of that. And give a good follow-up of the overall project, which covers all integration activities and is designed according to each acquisition specificities and to the integration policy of the acquirer, of course. So that's the end of a few recommendations regarding post-merger integration, according to my experience in that matters. And now I'm turning back again to Richard.
Cedric, thank you very much. That was really informative and very interesting. We're coming to the end of our webinar. Before we conclude, I'd like to talk a little bit about, just a minute or two, about the Mergerware platform, as I think it's relevant, in particular to the discussion topic. Mergerware is a unified digital platform that improves the way you conduct your M&A process by employing technology and centralizing information and making it easier to manage that information from one place. It allows you to define your integration project plan, as we're talking about the importance of that, and track it to reduce your risk and ensure that you actually create the synergy that you planned on creating up front. Additionally, it helps to assist in the tracking, and performance of the project. Some of the key benefits of the platform is that it has very robust security. You can control who can see what and where and when, and you have full audit capabilities. And it provides a number of benefits on both the pre-deal and on the post-deal side. So I won't spend much time going through the details of that, but I'd like to invite everyone to visit our website and to contact us for more information. With that, do we have any questions from the audience at this point? I think Cedric will be available to answer. If not, we certainly will follow up with you after the webinar, and you certainly can engage with Cedric or myself or anyone regarding the topic today or regarding Mergerware. So with that, I think we're going to end our webinar. We ended a little early today, which is, I think is great. Give everyone back some time. And thank you very much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you, Cedric.